All right, 1212 Radio Culture. Welcome to episode 2, edition 2, volume 2, whichever way you want to call it. This is where we get to talk among ourselves as kindred. Well, yes, indeed. I am only here at the controls. Today's edition will be moderated by the Right Honorable Empress Marina Blake, who is standing by right now. Of course, it's a free, open, frank, but most of all, respectful discussion among the children on the continent and those that were taken away. In a quick minute, we'll be crossing over and we will be bringing on Empress Marina Blake to start the process of moderating today's edition. Also in the waiting room is 7 Fireside. The link is out there. Everybody is welcome. In the meantime, let's welcome Empress Marina Blake and the man we love to call 7 Fireside. Welcome, beloved.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my lord.
Yes.
Bless.
Fire.
Yes, bless.
Love.
Good
Bless
to be
love.
here.
All
Yes.
right. So, Empress, today we are looking at the part 2 of the topic that we started with last month, which is, do we trust ourselves? I believe we had a little, discussion on the side about the appropriateness of the topic in the first place. You can throw that in as well. But do we really trust ourselves as continental Africans and diasporan, if you may, Africans? Over to you, Empress Marina Blake. And 7 Fireside, welcome. We're on the site with Empress.
Radio Culture.
Take it away, Empress.
Yes. Well, we don't know each other. So, so there is a certain degree of caution in in our interactions. Understandably so, right? We have been separated for centuries, and so we're just now beginning to reconnect with each other. Those of us in the diaspora and those on the continent, we're just now beginning to interact with each other and getting to know one another. So there's going to be a certain amount of caution in our interactions. So I was a bit I wasn't entirely comfortable with the way the question was phrased, to say about the distrust. It almost implies an inherent distrust that would go beyond the ordinary, because people just meeting each other for the first time of any race would also approach each other with a certain amount of reservation. And so that is what I see here. There would just a natural reservation. Now, there have been some negative interactions between us, which may have then give rise to outright distrust. But I do not think that we are inherently distrustful of each other. We do not know each other. And as I had mentioned to you before, and which I think should form the basis for today's discussion, that 13 years ago in 2012, I wrote an article entitled "Letter to the Continent," and in that letter, I sought to bridge the gap between continental Africans and those of us in the diaspora. Right? So I sought to open a discussion between the two groups. And in the beginning of the article, I clearly stated that we don't know each other, and to the extent that we know anything about each other, it has been through the prism that the white man has erected. He has told us negative things about you, and he has told you negative things about us. Because most Africans coming to the West or interacting with us, they have a perception of us of being lazy, shiftless, prone to violence, prone to criminality, don't want to work, would rather collect government benefits than work. We're not innovative. You understand? We have not availed ourselves of all the great opportunities that the United States has to offer. So that is the way we have been portrayed, not just the Africans on the continent, but around the world. Every class of immigrant will come to the United States and disrespect foundational Black Americans, including Caribbeans, including people from from Jamaica, from Trinidad. Right. We all come to the United States thinking that people born in the United States or, generational, Black Americans are lazy, shiftless, and would rather collect welfare. And, context matters. Context matters. And so the purpose of my letter to the continent was to spark a debate among us. And it did exactly that, because the debate, it was a robust debate, sparking a discussion that went on for about a year, back and forth. People from all over, the people to whom the letter had originally been sent, and then they shared it with others, and it just kept ballooning. It kept snowballing. And so we got some really nice, robust, intelligent, incisive, probing, penetrating discussions about the various issues that affect us, and then affect our ability to communicate with each other and interact with each other. Yes.
All right, Empress. All right. So I have something small to say about the appropriateness of the title, though, just to put it out in the open, and then we can move on. I believe Seven also has something to say about that, or maybe something else. But as I stated, I think that for a very long time we have been cloaking or like clothing, I should say, the issues in too much finesse. Like somebody who's hungry, they don't care about a dirty plate. Like somebody who's starving in the desert, and you give them food, the least they're thinking about is the the plate. They're thinking about the food. All I'm trying to say is that for too long we have like symposiums, we have lectures, we have all those are very important. All those are speaking to a certain constituency. But I think that on this platform, we also seek to, in addition to that, bring the discussion to some bare knuckles level where everybody will know exactly what we are saying.
Okay.
So if I say, do we trust ourselves? We can couch that in a dozen different ways to mean the same thing.
Okay.
But if I step up and I ask my brethren or my sister from the other side of the Atlantic, do you trust me? And then I go inside myself and I ask myself, do I trust you? These are discussions that we need to have. And I don't think that's what this platform is for. We need to get to the bottom of it, right? Have frank, open, but respectful discussions about these things. Because, for instance, Empress, I have been witness to a situation where returned children from the West who are living in Ghana, right? Brethren and sisters who are repatriated, have a community, and they hold a meeting and they bar local Ghanaians from attending that meeting. Do you trust me? If you do, why can't I come and sit with you? But it's both ways. It's both ways also. We are also doing some things that we need to probe to find out whether really and truly we also trust our brethren and sisters on the other side. So that's why I feel like sometimes we have to bring it out in the open. We have to make it like a really bare knuckle discussion and state it very bluntly. So that's just, but yeah, from there we'll get deeper into the discussion. Seven. Come in, Seven.
I love how it's going, though. I want to hear what Empress Marina has to say about the insights that she kind of got, or some of the ideas that came up in the year-long robust exchange.
Yes, let me see. I'm going to have to go into my email to look at some of the the comments that have been made, that were made. But right off the top, I think one of the things that came up was that, especially with respect to Rastafari, and this is something that I've always wondered, you know, sometimes out loud, that how is it that we from the West we're coming in with a Rastafari culture that is largely influenced by Western ideology, right? Our Western paradigm, our Western mindset. And well, that's the only mindset we have as Black people in the West, right? Our reality has been shaped by Western culture. So how is it that which is white men? So how is it then that we're going to take that and we're going to go to Africa, and we're going to try to impose that paradigm. We're going to try to frame spirituality in a Rastafari sense, in a Western Rastafari culture that comes out of a Western paradigm, and we're going to try to impose that on our indigenous African brothers and sisters who have never left the continent and who are more Africans than we are, who are more aware of the culture than we are. So how do we come in with a white man, a white center? Because however much we want to Rastafari is a culture that's stood up against the injustices of the West, and and it is the Black man's way of worshiping the divine, of acknowledging the divine. It still comes out of a white man perspective, out of the King James version of the Bible, out of the Abrahamic philosophy. It comes out of that. And then there are African cultures, indigenous, that's so far removed from that. So how do we go there and we displace those people we try to supersede and supplant those indigenous cultures with our white influenced version of Rastafari?
Interesting.
My lord?
Yes, interesting. 7, reaction?
Yeah, I think it's profound. But alongside, I want to just think about how for a lot of people, Rastafari is what they've seen the Jamaicans do. I think it's more epistemological than like a unidirectional imposition. That's almost like there's an openness, generally speaking, to show me what Rastafari is. What the people are doing in Jamaica is what Rastafari is. So what you're doing is more or less trying to say, wait a minute, let's think about it. What is Rastafari? And you're acknowledging that there are other ways of being. And if Haile is Rastafari, then we must think it from that angle rather than what are Rasta people doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's secondary, to what Jamaican Rastas are doing. It's crucial. It's shine the light on His Majesty. It's held us there, it's inspired us, it's given us tools to use, to stand up for this. But what I'm hearing the Empress say is that, that is only I don't want to say it's an approximation here, but I don't know if that's the word you would use. It's what our brothers and sisters are trying to do based on what the experiences are, right? And the people on the continent have another reality.
Yes.
And we have to bring that out a little more, or at least we have to live like. But what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of us who would say it's almost like you are deluding. I mean, the people who go to brethren and sistren from the Caribbean to learn what Rastafari is.
Mm-hmm.
We can't overlook that. What does that mean? You know what I mean? People who joined mansions that were created in the Caribbean to learn what Rastafari is. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a serious thing to think about, because that to them is Rastafari. Anything else is like, you better learn this. This is how it is. And that's created quite a few fissures.
Yes.
Yeah, amongst
Yes.
us, But I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Well, my point of view is a bit revolutionary, and as a consequence, it's not popular. Because I think that people can find their own path to God. We created Rastafari in the West because we had no other vehicle, right? We had to create a vehicle for ourselves. Many of our African brothers and sisters, they have their own vehicle. They have their own way of accessing the divine. It doesn't have to come through a Rastafari prism in the same way as that we designed it. I was at a conference in South Africa many years ago. I think it was in 2010. And a brethren from Zimbabwe, he rose up and he said, there's a hierarchy within Rastafari. And they don't like it. He said at the top of that pinnacle is the Jamaican Rastafari. Then the second tier consists of Rastafari from the other Caribbean islands. Then below that, on the third rung, is the Rastafari of the United States, throughout the West, UK, Europe. And then on the last rung is the African Rastafari. And that's how he was feeling, as though Rastafari was almost a it was a usurpation of, some very important indigenous cultures. And so we have gone in and run roughshod over some, traditions, some very important African traditions, without giving it, without much thought, because we are almost like coming in like colonizers. We're coming in with
So Empress,
this religion, and
isn't
this is how it is packaged, and this is what you must accept. Now, there are concepts within Rastafari that may mirror or track concepts within indigenous cultures, and we've got to find a way then that we can, that we can accommodate that we can understand and accommodate that, rather than trying to go in and imposing, this rigid set of standards on on people who have their own tradition that are much older than ours and are certainly not European centered the way Rastafari culture is.
So you see, Empress, that's more the reason why I think like we need to have that frank discussion and be very frank about it, right? Because somebody's thinking that there's a tier of there's some type of pantheon, right? And then me as a brethren who is looking at the next man as my brethren is seeing me at the bottom of some type of pantheon.
Yes.
This is why we have to have this open and frank discussion. And again, to the point that you made, it's very important, because look at something like Obia, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Obia and Rasta culture is like at odds.
Yes.
Because Obia is presented as evil, the bad
negative. Yes.
It's the same forces that presented Obia as an evil thing,
right,
that also presented that same thing to us on the continent as an evil force. Because remember, before we were colonized and enslaved and all these things had their places. These were secret societies, which white culture has also.
Yes.
Right? Obia is a science, as far as I know, from my research.
Yes.
Just like anything, it can be used for good or for bad.
Mm-hmm.
So if Obia is now the synonym for evil, it means that if somebody's coming from that place to tell me something, we have to have a discussion.
Yes.
Because we're not speaking from the same place.
Yes.
Right. And I completely agree with you on that. How do we have brethren and sisters who were taken away from their culture, right? Indoctrinated through all kind of means, forced through all kind of means, rediscovered themselves through some harsh means.
Yes.
They cannot necessarily or possibly show us the original. Does not mean they don't have anything to show us. Let's get that clear.
Right.
Because through their experience and through their trials and tribulations, they also have a ton of things that we can share as brethren, as kindred, you know.
Yes.
But if we try to trace to the original, I feel like the African Rastaman is
are in a better
definitely not
position.
at the bottom of that pantheon at all.
Right. Should not be. Right.
7.
Yeah, I think that I'm with what we're talking. I'm what the Empress is saying and what you're saying, Jah Beloved. I'm just thinking that we should not make the mistake of thinking that the African continent is pristine in terms of the culture either, because I mean, we just have to be upfront about the fact that Ghana was a model colony, highly colonized, and it's showing in the waves. And there's so many similarities between some of these attitudes that we're talking about in the West and enlightened, situations in Ghana and the rest of Africa, you know. So I'm very interested where you were going with. You have a revolutionary. You didn't actually say what you meant when you said that, Empress. I love you to just dip into what we mean by revolution. We need a break from some of these things rather than saying, "Oh yeah, we got it already." Lots of things in African culture were customized to suit colonialism.
Right.
Exactly.
They took over the chieftaincy institution. They set it up and walked away. And
how did we end up with J.H. Hankies as the preferred drink for our God? Like, where from that? J.H. Hankies.
So we need a clean slate, really. And that clean slate will come from another way of understanding existence itself. Rather than saying, yeah, this is so weird, this. And what, we're going to go teach you how to use the schnapps to do the libation now? We're still in the same prison, right? We need a break from that. And I want to throw in one thing too. So we're talking about retentions, or maybe if there's a better word for this. Our people in the Caribbean, our people in North America, right? Wherever, in the East, in Asia, right? Who were taken out of the continent as well. You know, while they were taking people across the Atlantic, they were taking people across the Pacific too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Indian Ocean, so to speak, rather, yeah. So there are all these African retentions still. These things have kind of been layered over some of these things, right? The impositions, the new experiences, those different understandings. But underneath it, there's still these African retentions. That's why I go for hear you speaking, Empress. Well, it feels so you to speak like one of my aunties or my sisters. You know what I mean? Straight. Like, the reason why most of us were drawn to reggae was, I mean, for me, I was hearing an African talk in there.
And dealing with the same themes also.
Yeah, even the disposition where I'm off with a TikTok. You know, the way people say something, right? When you hear me go see say, it be the way we go to talk. Very much so, right? Like, I'm not talking about the appearance of the talk, like, you know, whether it's patois and the accents and all. I'm talking about the attitude towards speech. The way you speak.
The same
the way
tone, the same...
Yeah, you know,
the same energy and everything.
Yes.
And Rasta, sometimes even the same words.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially with Jamaica,
you
right?
say poto poto, right?
Yes.
Poto poto. What does poto poto mean in Ghana? Nasty, dirty. You go to Jamaica, you say poto poto. What does that mean? Same thing. The other day I was talking to my brother who's Nigerian. I said poto poto. I said, oh, poto poto. We say that in Nigeria too. You know. Jamaicans say uno. Nigerians say una. Same thing. Same
And what
thing.
do we say, Ghana? Uno.
Wono.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
So those
Yeah,
pretensions are there. I think there's a bunch of things that I think maybe we can think through. You know, what kind of orientation have we had through education? Our meanings of the world, our meanings of even meaning itself. What do we value? What do we mean by culture? What do we mean by identity? Are these our own understandings of these things? Would we call these things culture and identity and faith and all these things if these people didn't mess with us? Maybe we'll call them something totally different and conceptualize them totally differently.
Absolutely. As I
Yes,
said,
but we're caught in this space where this is a faith because that's what the dominant framework says. This is a culture.
right,
And
but
then
we have no other background. Everything I
so
know, everything you know comes out of a Western paradigm. We
that's
have
it.
no
But
alternative. Yeah,
I'm just saying that the retentions are there, right? We take them as seeds for other possibilities. So let's encourage each other to feed those seeds, water them, nourish them. This what we basically what do we want to be really versus this is who we are in
mhm,
terms of our experiences.
yes,
Yes, that's a tricky thing to say though, because someone would say we're trying to say, well, let's forget about our past. That's not what we're saying, right? The retentions are there that we are our ancestors. Let's tap into all that. Let's tap into what all that means, and construct things, ways of thinking
yes,
that are true to this experience now. Because I think we get caught up in we Ghanaians are this. Ghana is a colonial fabrication. Let's face it, man. I mean, you can talk about how it's gateway to Africa, da da da, but it's a colonial setup. Let's
yes.
face it. If we accept that, then we can deal with it more finally. Than oh yeah, but at least we have this, but at least we have that. You know, let's talk about Ghana as a nation state, right?
But let me comment, if I may come in here to say,
Please, yeah.
right. So when I have been asked in the past what has surprised me the most about my interaction with my brothers and sisters on the continent, and I can speak specifically of Ghana because I live between New York and Ghana, and I was shocked at the extent to which the school system did not teach about the transatlantic slave trade, about the relationship between us. I was shocked as to how little the people, you know, children and adults alike, how little they knew about us and our struggle in the West and how we got here in the first place, and how our struggle is their struggle, it's the same struggle, and that it's the same enemy, and that it's the same system that oppresses them, that oppresses us. And that, so they had almost this romanticized version, or well, I shouldn't even say romanticized, a very cursory knowledge of the transatlantic slave system. I'm talking about even teachers, even headmasters. They knew very little when we tried to engage them. So I had two of my children, two of my sons, my Ghanaian sons, that is, right? That we were in school at the time, and one evening they came home with an assignment that they should write, about the pros and the cons of the transatlantic slave trade. And I said, what? And and I said, what are
Wow.
the pros? Because I'm saying,
Yeah.
yeah, what are the advantages and the disadvantages of
Wow.
the slave trade?
Wow. They'll call it objectivity, right?
And
They're,
I'm
they're
saying,
trying to be. Go ahead,
but
please.
what? But no, they really thought. So when my husband and I went to the school, so
Yeah.
right, so we had these two children. They're about 12, 14 years old, and so we're saying, can you tell us what the advantages are?
Mm.
And you had teachers defending it. The teachers were saying, but oh, you got to live in America. You have nice house, cars, you have
Wow.
money, you can fly back and forth. And I said, but what you see in America, it comes at the expense of some other things, of you living the way you live here. America is what it is because it is a predatory nation. It's a
Absolutely.
predator people. It steals from other people to be able to afford a certain standard of living to people who are living in America. And so that America's success is a direct result, your lack of development, your poverty, is a direct result of America's prosperity. But they didn't understand that.
Wow.
And I'm talking about teachers. We're beyond the children now because we didn't expect 12-year-olds to understand that necessarily. But we're talking about teachers who don't really understand the relationship between Africa's lack of development and the great prosperity that you quote unquote that you see in the West. It has come, America's prosperity has come at the expense, the murdering, the death, the British prosperity, English prosperity has come at the expense of millions of people being murdered in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Ghana, throughout Africa. Their wealth, so that there is an inverse relationship between their wealth and your poverty. And I was shocked that adults didn't even understand that. Even if they according to them, you're right, they don't create the curriculum, which is true. They don't, the teachers, they're not the ones who select the books that are to be used in the school. But that aside, they themselves don't even possess any knowledge independent outside of that. They've never been curious to find out. They have just,
Empress, because they were 12 years old once and they were taught the same nonsense and they
and
have gone with it. So
right,
it just shits them, That
right,
has
but
to change
mhm,
because they were taught that. And then furthermore, you go to see these, the subject of slavery is not taught in schools. It's told to us by tour guides.
yes,
Now, these tour guides try to be kind of accommodating of the tourists who pass
yes,
through
the
the place.
sensitivity, yes,
They are sensitive to their
yes,
emotions. So
mhm,
they are taught to garnish the history. And we are also learning from the same source. That's the problem.
yeah,
They don't teach they don't teach slavery in schools. They don't teach that nowhere. They'll take you on an excursion to see the Cape Coast Castle, like you were going to see the Coca-Cola bottling factory.
yes,
That's the problem.
mhm, very much so, very much so. And so we have to change that. For instance, there's a school in Somania where we live, and we help the various schools, donations here and there, we sponsor children, here and there. But this particular school is asking us for a substantial amount, of investment because the school it's dilapidated, particularly the kindergarten. They need proper, the classroom. It needs renovation. And I have and my husband and I we have decided that we're going to help the school in terms of building a proper classes for the kindergarten. It's only two or three classrooms that they need. But we're saying that as a condition of that assistance, they're going to have to start now. There are things that we're going to require. We want to see them posting um we want to put up posters of Black heroes from Africa, from the West as well. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X. We want to see Jomo Kenyatta. We want to see Steve Biko. We want them right. So as a condition of our helping them, this is what it's going to be. Now you don't select the curriculum, but here's how we want to get this knowledge has to get into the system, has to get into to the children from the earliest of ages. And this is what we're requiring in exchange for our help. And this is how we're going to change one by one. All of us in the West, all of us who are conscious, we have a duty and an obligation, right? Because rather than just coming in with the Rastafari culture, yeah, Haile Selassie, God Almighty, that's a hard sell. It's a hard sell for people in the West. It's a harder sell for people on the continent. So you may want to save that for later. You're right. You don't want to open, don't open when you are going into a negotiation or a discussion, whatever. You don't open with something that's going to that's going to cause division or cause complete pushback, that the discussion stops. It doesn't even get off the ground.
Mm.
So you want
Empress,
to start,
how
yes,
then would
so you
you
want to
react
start
to
teaching people about themselves, about who they are, about who we are, about our relationship as brothers and sisters. And then you gradually build to that. You gradually build to now, right? So you understand that your perception of the world was shaped by somebody else, by other people who had their own agenda. And so that they framed God, the divine, the almighty. They have put it in a in a white, in a white coat. They're cloaked in whiteness. And so in order to get you to worship whiteness, in order to get you to distrust yourself and to discard your culture and your traditions. So you build to that little by little. I think we've been taking the wrong approach for a very long time. And but
at the same time also, right?
we're going in with a club, the club people on their head to say accept Rastafari without building up a relationship, breaking down some of the basic barriers that already exist, that naturally exist, and then the artificial barriers that have been put up by the white men. And then when you get people more pliant, when they're more aware now and say, oh gee, well, this is the trickery that the white man has perpetrated against us, then you can start getting them now to see, yeah, well, God could be black, and then God is black. And here's why you need to see it that way. And here's why, worshiping God or the divine through a black prism is better. It's better for our race. That we cannot progress as long as we are viewing the white God through the lenses that have been given to us by our colonizers and our enslavers. We can't economically, not mentally, psychologically, economically, socially. We cannot progress as long as we are shackled with that mindset, that white mindset. We need to be more sensitive. I'm telling you, we need a different approach. The approach we've been taking it's not the best. It has not yielded the results. There was a one of the presidents of Ghana that says Ghana doesn't need any more religion. Ghana needs no new religion. And they were specifically saying that as a pushback to Rastafari. I wish they had been as vocal when the Mormons came into Ghana. I wish they at that time they could have said Ghana doesn't need any more religion. I wish when other religions, other sects of Christianity had come in, they would have said that. Well, they didn't say that. They're saying it now to Rastafari. So, we have to show them that Rastafari it's not a religion. It's more than that. It is a culture, it's a cultural awareness with a spiritual component, and that it is not antagonistic to the interest of Black people. In fact, it promotes that. That is what it promotes, unlike Christianity that lead Black people away from themselves and promotes self-hatred. And it promotes them, a discarding of African traditions and cultures. Rastafari doesn't seek to do that. So once again, we are not very good advertisers of our product. We need a PR. We need a PR agency. We need who's going to package this thing in the right way.
So
Yeah.
I have a quick reaction though about, first of all, the African is inherently religious. And I'm not saying religious to mean religion as in what has been created to confuse mankind. But the African is inherently religious in the sense that if you check African traditional culture, you would find households who have their own gods. Cape Coast, the almighty Cape Coast that we all know, was fabled to have 99 gods, right? And households would have their own personal, individual gods, who they will never force anybody to worship. Matter of fact, they don't want you near their gods. That's their secret. That's how they can defeat you when they
Mhm.
have to go to war with you. So they are not really forcing you into their corner to come worship none of their God. Point though I'm making is that Africans are inherently religious. Now, after so many years of brainwashing Africans with some type of deity in the sky and all of that, to yank that away and leave a void, I think is dangerous. Because it's either that pushback that you're referring to will be in the opposite direction, because people will probably feel like, oh, there's nothing for me to rely on, might as well just stay in this corner because there's association, which is a big factor, right? But beyond that, though, to just leave the African wandering, it's to me dangerous. Secondly, Africa should never be seen, and this is the mistake we make a lot of times. We see Africa as one homogeneous unit to which every rule applied. It
Right.
was not like that at all.
No.
The people who started collaborating with the white people to enslave us were Africans too.
Mhm.
I was watching a video of the one slave camp up north, and the tour guide said something very instructive. He said, "No white man ever came here. No white man ever came here." So this is why we need this discussion. We have to be open and frank. I understand that there's a house in Accra where there's a tunnel that led to the slave castle, because the owners of the house, fabulously rich from slavery, of course, did not want people to know they were engaged in that. So they would build a tunnel and smuggle their slaves through that tunnel straight to the castle to go ship them away. That discussion has to be had. But shimming back a little bit to Haile Selassie, though, I think that if this is why we always ask the perpetual question, what is Rastafari? I feel like Rastafari has been the most uniting force among Black people, period. Because even for people who do not identify as Rasta, they align with the Rasta philosophy for the most part.
Some of it.
Yes, there's the liberation struggles going on all over. All these are aligned to Rastafari. So if you want a religious angle to our struggle, that is Rastafari, as far as I'm concerned. And I agree with you when you say that, okay, maybe we're looking at it through the prism of a Western, concept or something like that we can look at and revolutionize. But I don't think we should throw away the baby with the bathwater, because once we take that away, we are leaving a confused African. And as I'm saying, Africans are not one homogeneous unit where everybody was following a certain way, where you can take that away and replace it with one thing. It will not work like that. We would need to get to the bare bottom of things. For instance, if you tell people that a king in Ethiopia is more connected to you than a king in England, I'm sure they can associate with that for sure.
Yes.
Without necessarily admitting that their culture, maybe Asante culture, is the same as Falasha culture or Amharic culture or whatever other culture, So I think that yes, we may have to rethink some of the concepts we float out there that are supposed to align with Rastafari, but the basic concept of Rastafari, I think, is the solid bedrock on which all our liberation struggles, all our reasonings, everything will be anchored on. And I feel like, again, if we don't have the religious angle of that, it's just chaos. Because some of us are Muslims, some of us are Christians, some of us are Hindus, some of us are all the religions you can find in the world. We're looking for something which is a higher truth than the existence that we have. And Rastafari covers this existence we have. The liberation struggle is real. It's here. It's with us. But when it comes to that which is beyond the known, which is a vital topic, I feel like Rastafari should also be there for the African, and I feel like we are. Just my 2 cents.
A point I want to make here. I believe that there's more than one way to access the divine. And I've heard Muta say something similar. that it cannot be that there's only one way to God. When you have so many different peoples on the face of this earth, so many different cultures. Now, Christianity and Islam are unique in their never-ending quest to for converts. One of my secretaries is she's Hindu. She has never tried to culture me to Hinduism. I have friends who are Buddhist who have never tried to, although Buddhist is not really a religion, right? It's not really a religion, It's a spiritual, yeah. And I know some of the tenets of Buddhism because in discussing it with my friends. But in terms of proselytizing and trying to win new converts and to even go to the extent of killing people who refuse to accept your religion, Christianity and Islam are unique in that regard for murdering people who don't accept their ideas. Because for the, religion is culture. Religion is culture, and in order for them to control you, you need to submit to their religion. So people may think that religion is not just, oh, I made this choice. No, religion is culture, and especially and Christianity and Islam in particular. Dr. Umar Johnson, I don't know, if you are familiar with him, or if either of you are familiar with Dr. Umar Johnson. He said at one point he was looking into Islam, becoming, to become a Muslim, and then he realized that he would have to become an Arab. He's a black man from the United States. He would also have to become an Arab in order to become a Muslim, because you have to get a new name, an Arab name. You have to learn to speak Arabic in order to read the Quran. You have to be. So they're turning him into an Arab. So I would have to negate my black self, my blackness, in order to become a good Muslim. That's one point. Now, another point I want to get back to, and I agree that we need to talk about the complicity of black people in the transatlantic slave trade, right? And as we are talking among ourselves, we can most definitely discuss it. But I don't like that. I absolutely push back against that narrative when we're talking publicly, because I don't need a white man to come and tell me that, oh, but your own people sold you into slavery, or they were complicit in slavery. I don't need you to do that. That is something between brothers and sisters. You don't get involved. You're an outsider, white man. You are an outsider. So if there's a disagreement or an issue between us as black people, blacks in the diaspora and blacks on the continent, we can work it out without your input, because you're only here as a troublemaker. You're here to sow division and discord. I'm not having that discussion publicly for the benefit of any white man. Moreover, I can forgive who I want to forgive and not forgive. You understand? I can forgive whoever I want. I choose to forgive. 10 people can wrong me, and I can choose to forgive 2 and not the other 8. So that is our internal discussion that we should have. But the thing is that we are so far down. We are ranking last on every indices of success: education, health, housing, wealth. We don't have time to quarrel among ourselves. If my black brothers and sisters were involved in the transatlantic slave trade, I forgive them, because I have no time. I don't have the energy. Energy is not endless. I don't have time to fight with my brother and sister and to say, oh, well, you did participate in the transatlantic slave trade. So in as much as I hold the white man responsible, I also hold you responsible. I don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. We can't afford it.
Empress, is that a personal position or is that a general position? Because
No,
some people are some people are really sensitive to that subject, right?
Yes, I
And
know.
some people feel like there should be some type of atonement and at least some, apology of some sort. Or tell us more how you feel. Is this a personal position, or is there a constituency that feel the way you feel?
I don't know if it's a constituency, and as I say, my position may be unique, but I don't like crybabies. I don't like weak people. Yeah, you were involved in slave trade. Yeah, buck up and let's move on. We have so many things to do. We are so far behind. We can't afford discord and disagreement and fight. We can't afford infighting. We're poor. We ain't got no money. We don't have time to fight. We need to make amends and move on. Get over it.
So how would you respond if somebody said,
listen, listen. Okay, there is something in law called joint and several liability, right? Where you have a number of people responsible for a wrong that was perpetuated against someone else. And so when you go to court, you sue everybody and you can apportion blame percentage-wise. Who was more at fault? Well, I'm telling you, I'm apportioning 90% to the white men and 10% to my African brothers and sisters. That's what I'm saying. All right, 20% to my African brothers and sisters and 80% to the white man. It's still, Walter Rodney said it in his book. He's saying a lot of times when this argument comes in, it is only here to divide us. They never harp on it when it comes to the Jews. A lot of Jews were complicit in the Holocaust in helping to turn over other Jews to Hitler. And they got paid for it, but nobody talks about that. Nobody dwells on that because it is divisive for the Jews.
interesting, but Empress,
for reparation. It's divisive for us too, and we must not entertain it. It is a time waster. It's a non-starter. We need to focus on the people who have done us the most wrong and who continue to do wrong to us in the West and to those on the continent. The people who continue to rape our continent, to rape Africa. I don't have time to fight with my African brothers and sisters because I'm reserving that energy to fight with my true enemy. Right. My which is white man. What's wrong with us? I mean, what's wrong with us? White man, then we can turn to talking to each other now and saying, listen, what you did to me was really wrong. But otherwise, I'm not entertaining it.
How would you react, Empress? How would you react to somebody who says that even that 20%, that 10% is still significant and has to be taken care of because we're talking about reuniting? Now, if someone has been forcibly taken away from home and they get to find out that one of their cousins or one of their brothers or one of their siblings was involved in that, and after so many years, they're coming back home. Back to the question on table, do we trust ourselves? Should we just think of reuniting without tackling that subject when we know there are models
of
slavery still here today?
It's a minor issue. It's a sub-issue. It's a minor issue. Let us deal with the main issue. And the main issue, we have a common enemy. We have a common enemy. And we need to unite in order to defeat that common enemy. And we need to shelve whatever else we're holding, shelve it. I don't care what kind of grudge I'm holding against my husband. If people are storming our house, I'm uniting with him to fight them off. I can deal with our personal issues afterward. When the battle has been won, then when the battle has been won, we can talk about that. But that is distracting. That's taking away energy. Energy is not endless. Walter Rodney said it in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. It's not as though if the white man hadn't come to the shores of Africa with its nefarious intentions, it's not as though Africans would have been capturing other Africans, bringing them to the beach of the Atlantic and saying, gee whiz, I wonder if somebody will invent something called the transatlantic slave trade so that we can send our brothers and sisters abroad. You understand? The idea didn't originate with us.
Yes, there was slavery. There was slavery, but it's different, right? There was slavery, but it's different. And I don't know if you can even call it slavery because truth of the matter is, look at the Ghanaian context, for instance. Donko is somebody who can even voluntarily sign with you. It's basically like the job market today, basically, right? You sign for a job and then you go and do it. But in back in the day, you would like sign to somebody, and then when you are a donko, when the master realizes that you're a smart donko, they can even give you their daughter to marry. So even when we look at the word slave, the concept to the West, to the white man, is different from what it means to the black man. So I believe there are many people who probably sold slaves thinking, oh, it's regular. You know what I'm saying? But this, like I said, these are some of the things we need to understand properly to even get to the bottom of why somebody would take their brother, their kindred, and give them to the next man. Empress, I hear you loud and clear. Maybe it's not the biggest topic right now, but I feel like it's still at the core of how we relate to each other. I think so, because hear what, Empress.
We need to close ranks.
This is elevating the discussion, though. Hear what, though. There's a constituency, maybe you have heard about them, maybe not, who are even propagating that they are not even African to start with. People should stop calling them African American. They are American, period. Stuff like that. You know. So I think we may be making a mistake if we brush it under the carpet. I feel like every voice must be heard. And if there's some apology, I wish everybody would take your stance. I wish everybody would say, oh.
Listen, waste of time. We must close around.
I think your phone is ringing, and radio. Yeah, your phone was ringing or something. I'm not sure where that phone tone was coming from, but we couldn't hear you. Empress Marina. Okay, I think she's frozen now. I hope she can come back. 7. Any reactions?
Yeah. Me like, so I go put 100% on the white people for the slavery thing, right? Well, I go time to what Empress just say about the Jews, where they help Hitler. When they talk about the things where happened to the Jews, they talk about Hitler all day, Hitler in head, right? Or the Nazis, right? Why say we will start to take percentages? People did it because white people set it up, right? Yeah, but I see where you're going with that, to be able to talk through it so that we go be clear about what it means, like what it happened right now, what Empress Marina said, and what you to say. It'll help us to come to terms with it, right? Now, one thing we have to be careful about too, we say sometimes in listing people's families and names and this and that, we have to be clear what we're trying to do, because it go fit say you try to say everyone in this family is this, and maybe like we're saying, we always talk about families where they sell people, give white people. Some of them got added to the people taken. You know what I mean? People who worked with the slavers were added to those people taken, and things like that. It doesn't follow say if the family is a certain way, every individual will be like that. So it looks like, it will start looking like we're doing this to prove, say, some of us were not like that, right? But if we're not careful, we go place the emphasis on it in such a way, say, it will be like, say, we give white people a reason to just mess with us too, right? Like what the Empress is saying. So maybe we thought be more blindingly direct when we're talking about these things, rather than just be on the level we're trying to expose people to the knowledge, try to describe it. Let's talk about it more finally, right? Like, okay, this is what happened. And like Empress said, we're in a war with this white world, right? That is the point. That's all we do it.
Yeah.
That's it. So let's use that framework. And let's also remember, say, Mao killed more black people than white people, right?
That's important.
That too, yeah. So
that's important, because really and truly, Nana,
those things are real too. We have
slavery would never have happened without the collaboration of some of our brothers and sisters. That's a bad fact.
But let me add something real quick. Can I add something real quick before I forget? So I was talking about Mao, right? The Kenya Land Freedom Army, right? Dedan Kimathi, in his writings, he says, we go treat them like this, right? We go punish them. The black people when they work with the white people, we go punish them, right? But we're not going to dwell on it, because there are brothers where they lose them way. That'd be how he said. The emphasis is on we're trying to deal with this problem where white people create, like you go say. because a lot of people were working with the white people to try to stop the freedom fighters, and they treat them real. They don't treat them. Things happen. So, like, if we think about it in those terms, right, rather than making it like the thing, yes, we're gonna be hard on them, but that's not the point. The point is that we're trying to deal with this other question here, the one that caused the situation where these people go free function inside. And there are always people like that, right? Look at Nkrumah, the things Nkrumah for go through, right? Look at the things where Traore they go through, right? There's always some black people
Exactly my
around
point,
there.
Nana.
Yeah.
Well said. That's why I feel like we should at least find the equivalent, right? Because right now, look at it this way. There are these families that we're talking, and we're not saying that we're exposing the families to ridicule. No, we're telling the truth. We're saying the thing as it is. Because we have some of these families who, as a result of that slavery, establish themselves as some type of rich, wealthy family that has sustained that wealth from generation to generation up till even this day. There are some people who carry themselves a certain way because of that, because they feel like they come from some type of backdrop. If you want that privilege, you should also carry the burden that comes with it, if you ask me.
No, what about
Number
if
one,
we just
I'm making a point though.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, there could be somebody who comes from that line but is completely opposed to the things that the family did. I don't think there's any way that a family will be like all of them are that one track mind. No, definitely there'll be some detractors, so to speak, from that, right? So I agree with you. You cannot take the family and say, hey, we blame them for all of that. But look at the point where the whole entire African continent is being blamed for selling their own, as if that even makes sense, right? But how about for those that feel aggrieved? Let's find those who actually took part in the thing. Give a formal apology. After that is done, I think like that is going to establish some level of trust. Rather than now, we can't really put 100% on the white man, if you ask me. White man never went to the Salaga slave camp. But
just like all the Nazis,
bringing their people and marching them down all the way to the slave camp. So if we don't identify that problem and identify that they are equivalents in this current, we will be working, and then there will be Babatus among us who we may not identify just because they are black like us. So that's the point I'm trying to make over there.
I get it. So your point is we have to identify those who are creating problems and deal with them. And I think it's a particular thing, that's different than identifying families or groups. For me, it's more like we have to have a mindset where even if someone's coming from your own group, where you think, say, we, as far as we don't be like that, we start to act like that, I go treat you like that. You know what I mean? Versus, oh, this group of people are like this, we're here to come on something, because we all the track history where we know what happened to just about all our people with the stand up, right? Sometimes some people with it very close in that group where you think, say, as far as we get it, right? Somebody will start do something. Sometimes if you don't mean to do something crazy, but I just think say that would be the logical thing to do. This is gonna be where we're gonna talk about examples and mention names. That's insignificant, but it happens all the time, right? So if my brother they act like that, or my sister they act like that, though we all to make this move, I will have to treat them a certain way. In that moment, doesn't mean that the larger goal is we're skipping it, right? But if we have to have the understanding that we should, first of all, I think that before understand what we to do, what are we doing this for? What are we living for? Right? Because
I feel like we need to be faithful to history though, right? Mm-hmm. Because if we're going to find our way back to each other, and mind you, we were not one homogeneous unit before the white man came and took us away. Mm-hmm. Africans were still living in separate groupings. If we have to find our way back to a point where we actually go beyond even before they took us, right? Because now we are actually identifying as Africans, as black people. We can actually unite. There's more of a reason to do so, right? But I feel like we should be faithful to history. What really happened? a people without the knowledge of their history, you know where that goes. So I feel like we should just be truthful. If my grandfather was involved in that, of course you see me sitting here, you know I'm not that type of person. So you, of course, are not going to blame it on me, but I will be responsible for delivering an apology rather than leaving it for the whole entire continent to be blamed. Oh, Africa sold its children. I don't know if I'm making sense with that though. Empress, you're muted.
Yeah.
You're muted, Empress. Empress Marina, you're muted. Can you check your Empress? You're muted. I can't hear you. We can't hear you talking. Can you check your microphone? I don't know. And Russ Kofi, your camera is off. If you can please turn on your camera, we can bring you on to join the discussion. Russ Kofi Asante, please turn on your camera so we can bring you on. If you can hear me, please. Thank you. Empress Marina, we still cannot hear you. I'm not sure what's going on with your mic. But while you try to sort it out, Seven, you had something to say?
No, I was just saying that yeah, like the I think we frame the conversation in a way where it suits our purposes more. You know, like if that be objective, let's emphasize that. You know, like if we try to make people understand what happened, history, let's emphasize that that's what we're doing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because like you know, Empress the caution, and as we say, it go fit spill over into more division easily. Right, because there be situations where the African chiefs, Ghanaian chiefs, where they do this yearly atonement thing. You know that, right? For those purposes, right? And some people go say, "Why you keep just what you know?" It's like this is not necessary. Some people will be like, "Say nothing is happening," right? They took the initiative to do that, right? They go perform these rituals and ask for forgiveness, right? But we still hear this, right? So
because it's not coming from the right source.
Well, if it's coming from the families too, and like you say, the family that carry themselves in a certain for that thing about family carrying self like they're important and others, we take our mind to the place where we ignore that. We didn't make them see that it not to mean anything. Right? Instead of saying, oh, when one feel this me a special, so this, right? Because we've seen highly, right? We've seen the standard, right? So none of these things will impress us. You know, we for come to that place where we know they say, oh, these people feel, say, yeah, this or that people feel. Also, we feed into the elitism ourselves just by recognizing and reacting to it. I think so. That's my position. If we tell them to go to hell, if they do reasonable, we deal with unreasonable. If they try to act like they be, we just tell them to go to hell. That'll be our answer system level B. You know, that's how I see it. But I think we feed into it. All these people feel they're special. So, yeah, we're going to deal with that. We're going to answer that question. That's not a question to answer. To hell with them.
I agree with you. Except that yeah, you're back, Empress. Let me make one quick point, please, and then I'll put you on. So Nana Minim said, if you have noticed this, until very recently, lawyers in Ghana only had a certain type of name. That's what I'm talking about. So there's a structure which most of us don't even know exists, right? But for generation upon generation upon generation, these people handle the power. This is why we're where we are. I was speaking with David Hundein the other time, and he made that point. It's not possible that Nigeria, for instance, over 200 and how many million people, it's not possible that all of them are that stupid for the country to be the way it is, right? It's only a few people who are collaborating with the bigger force to make the country run that way. Same thing here. So if we completely just gloss over it and be like, we not go book you, screw you, whatnot, we can do that. And I definitely endorse that. But I think we should go beyond that to making them know that, okay, we know what happened in history. We know exactly what happened in history. And my point is that my focus is not these people. These people have to stand up and own up, render the apology so we can move on. That's my focus. I'm not seeing them as an enemy, as somebody to fight or anything like that. I'm seeing them as somebody who, like my cousin who messed up on my behalf and has to stand up and apologize on my behalf. Simple and short. Rather than me, whose ancestors were running away, helping to build the walls for people to run behind. Chiefs, go to the north. There were chiefs who instilled laws to fight slavery. Their ancestors, their descendants today are being pointed at that you sold us into slavery. It makes no sense to me. I'm saying,
and that's why I'm
sorry, I took
saying,
too much of the time.
listen to me. We cannot allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. We must not allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. So the relationship between us, it's not perfect because there are some suspicions that some of our continental brothers and sisters may have participated in the transatlantic slave trade. They did not invent it. They did not suggest it to the white man. They didn't reach out to him and say, can you help us? Can you collaborate with us to start a slavery system that's going to persist for 400 years? That's going to, totally, I really don't understand. We are adults. We don't have time. We are being oppressed, brutally oppressed by a certain group of people, by most other people. The black man has no friends outside of the black race. And you want me to spend time taking my brother to task because of something he did to me? Unless he's actively trying to sabotage me right now in this moment, I ain't got time. All my resources and my energies will be corralled, and will be used to fight the external enemy. I can get back to when the dust is settled, then I can get back to my brother or my offending cousin and say to him, yeah, why did you do that? How is it that but right now, I don't need any further division in my race, in my rank. We ain't got no friends outside of the black race. So we can't afford to make enemies of each other. And that's what it is. I don't like weak people. I don't like crybabies. Okay? We will deal with that later on. But right now, let's harness our resources. Let's unite. Let's come together and fight our common enemies. Do you think when white men are discriminating against us, he's saying, I'm going to differentiate between Empress Marina was born in Jamaica, Kofi Asante was born in Ghana, Hector Peterson, he was born in South Africa. They are lumping us all together. They are oppressing us all equally. We don't have time to be divided among ourselves. I don't care what he did. I don't care. I will deal with that later on. And we must not feed into that narrative. It's not about being honest, intellectually honest. Yeah, that's all well and good from a theoretical standpoint. But somebody's beating down my door right now trying to kill me. I don't have time to pontificate on the vagaries of the theory of joint and several liability. Let me see who owes me more, who is more responsible. I ain't got time. Thank you.
Radio culture.
Russ, Mayentiu.
Rastafari.
Selassie.
Yeah. The issue of Africans and the diaspora, I think there's a basis for our unity, which is we are one people, one common history, one common origin. And the story of slavery, for me, I see Africans as victims. And so if we promote a narrative that has to do with, that focuses on apology, eventually may, from where I stand, feed into the white supremacy narrative. Because if we start with apology, that means we must start looking at victims and crimes against each other. But like Empress mentioned, as Africans, we are victims. Africans we're not waiting to say, well, we have some children. I wish some Europeans so that I can sell them. No, first there was trading. when we established trading with them, then they took advantage of trading networks, and then they overthrew the Africans themselves who were trading among themselves, and then they became the point of trade. It's like Africans couldn't trade among themselves except through them. That is where they promoted the slavery trade. So it's not as if Africa has economic prospects and so invested in it, but Africans were victimized. I think one king was even mentioning that they don't have trade. When Europeans were demanding for slaves, Africa didn't have any to supply until after some time where the Europeans themselves enabled them to create conditions that would make slaves available for sale. So I think our emphasis should be on our unity, should be on what we can do for ourselves in terms of dealing with the common enemy, rather than trying to victimize each other, pointing fingers at some wrongs that sometimes, if we look at it, maybe family issues that we have to deal with. So in brief, this is what I have to say. I may come in when need be. Thank you.
Nice one, Russ. Give time.
Can I say something after that?
Oh, sure,
That was really
Russ.
good. Yeah. So what I'm getting is this: if we take like we're all moving in the same direction, what I get would say, I want to hear what Job Lovett is saying as a response to people from outside the continent of Africa pointing fingers at the people on the continent and blaming them. So he's addressing a problem, right? That could be solved by what Empress Marina and what Russ Kofi just said.
Yes.
So if we take that mind, if we take that attitude, then this could be nothing. But I know we say we for point only at the people on the continent who are trying to say, hey, you know, we're trying to clarify this, which can be problematic in itself. But I mean, I feel say, if we think of it more in terms of what Empress Marina is saying, it affects all of us, both sides of the Atlantic, right? It's not like, oh yeah, you know, somebody, I don't agree that he's being weak by pointing it out. That's not true at all. Or he's complaining, he's being a crybaby. That's not what he's doing. I don't think you're saying he's being that. He's being a crybaby.
Oh, no, I'm only an advocate, by the way.
That's
so.
definitely, I don't think that's why he's there complaining about something. And I think also his role as a journalist, you know, they think they say that they just put data out there. Sometimes they run into problems with him too. Like, I'll be like, whoa, what's going on here? But he's putting the info out there. That's it, right? Now, but if we talk about dealing with it, you know, I think so if we think, say, you know, yes, there's a problem. You know, the people from outside Africa who come to Africa, move to Africa, and they have problems with the people on the continent. They complain about smartness. They complain about, you know, all those kinds of things. And especially like things like, just like how people from the continent to go look at our people from outside and also complain about smartness and things like that. So let's take all of this together, you know, and look at it like the critique of the behavior they apply to all of us, not just one side, people in today Africa. And then at the same time, to bear in mind, say, you know, it is a problem to harp on it in a way where white people will benefit. But at the same time, too, there is a problem. So I would love very much to hear maybe a little more about how, not necessarily the details of who did what, but the problem itself. And it's easy to say, just like I was saying, ignore these people. It's easy to say, I don't have time for this. But maybe if we get in there a little bit and say, okay, why do we have to think about it this way? It will help, because for some people, it's existential. You know, they look at someone in Africa, and I've been in situations like that, where people spoke from the bottom of their heart, where a lot of hurt, you know, based on this. I don't know if we just dismiss it like, I don't have time for that, because he's hurting, right? And it will affect the way we work together. You see what I'm trying to say? So I think it's something we will look at too at the same time. Mindful that we're trying not to divide. We're trying to understand what happened, you know. Yes. And we can be guided by what Empress Marina and Russ Kofi just said. You know, like, this is the framework we're working with, you know, and these are things we do alongside that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you summed it up for me, because really, it actually is a reaction. And it's a reaction of years of having to deal with that subject, right? of, oh, you sold us into slavery. Oh, you sold us into slavery. And I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking through the whole thing and I'm researching. I'm finding out bits and pieces of information. I'm piecing them together. And I'm realizing that today, as we speak, like I said, there is a huge constituency of people who do not, black people, I mean, who do not even want to identify with Africa no more. And it's all based on this. And it's based on the fact that they've been fed the wrong information. So if we don't own the narrative and speak the truth, because we're not owning the narrative to be, you know, kind of like dodgy about the facts. We're owning the narrative to speak the truth, put forward whoever has to be atoned to or whatever, do that on our own terms. Because currently, as we speak, we on both sides of this discussion are for the most part, working on the narrative that is floated out there and fed to us, mostly by the Western media, mostly by our educational systems, which are heavily influenced by the West still. That's all I'm saying. If we don't own the narrative ourselves, and you see what I'm saying, like, let me give you an example. My dad, right, when we were growing up, if you go do something outside, and everybody knows how our dad used to be, you get a good discipline, right? But if you do something that my dad doesn't think you should get any type of discipline, like, you know, you should be harsh with you for whatever, he'll chastise you in front of whoever came to report the matter, and then take you inside. If you deserve just, you know, some serious discipline, you get it. If not, he'll let you know, this is a non-starter. Just watch yourself, type of thing. And that's what I'm talking about. Let us own the narrative first. Let's snatch the narrative from the same person who colonized us, who is also telling us that, oh, they sold you into slavery. Oh, they are this and they are that. Nana, right now in school here in America, African American kids have a nickname for African kids. It's generational. So if we don't have this frank discussion and sweep all that nonsense into the sea, it's going to happen the next 2 generations from now. The African American kids will still be calling my kids that name. We Africans call African Americans some stupid name. Akata. At least Ghanaians call them that name. Where from that? And we're not talking about it. We feel like, oh, we can proceed beyond that. I feel like we should get to the bottom of it. Last episode, I was speaking with Aswad. We raised the issue of when we call, I'm saying we, because, you know, on behalf of Continental Africans, call our returning brothers Obroni. It's like the biggest insult ever. Right? But then we can have this discussion. And when I did have that discussion with Aswad, he actually saw a different angle to the whole thing, because he was as offended that anybody would call him Obroni. But check this out. Ghana, what's the term we use for our dear beloved people? Help me, Kofi Asante Pacho say. What do we call them?
People say me brony. Me brony. And of course, we cannot ignore the history behind that. Yes.
Which is messed up, but it's the reality. So when somebody is calling an African American or a black person from the West Obroni, they're not necessarily insulting you. They're actually endearing you, as strange as that may sound. This is why I feel like we have to have a discussion, talk about things, rather than assume that we already know things and we are going to just breeze past it. I'm just the advocate.
Radio.
Any reactions on that? I think we are about 30 minutes more to go. Any reactions? Any? Empress.
Well, I thought Ras Kofi was about to say something.
Oh, okay. So Ras Kofi first, and then Empress after that.
Yes, my lord. I was saying the issue of calling African Americans Obroni. I think it also has something to do with our colonial history. Yes. The fact that The white world have been sold to us as the perfect human beings. We have images of white people in our room, our Lord and personal saviors. And so this will create the impression that, well, anything Obroni means something is like worth looking up to. Hence, we ascribe them with that Obroni title.
Yes.
That's just some...
And then right after slavery too, you know what happened is they brought the missionaries, right? Between slavery and colonization till this day, they brought missionaries. These missionaries were the ones who came to make it look like, oh, they harmed you. Oh, sorry, those are the bad people. You understand? We come in white cassocks, we come in gowns, we come preaching the word of God, who is the savior, all of that. And then now we come with gifts like schools and hospitals and secondhand clothing and shoes, and we are coming to, so it was systematic. And yes, sorry, and you started to say every dear one's bronium. It came to a point where when two kings had an issue, they would go to a brony for resolution. And that also, I came to research and find out that it's not because they necessarily too much respected Obroni that he was too superior, but it's only because they thought he was neutral, right? If me, who is, let's say, I'm a Krapim, and my brother is Asante, and we have some fight, and we are fighting, and we say, this land is mine, and this land is mine, and everybody's claiming that my ancestors came here first. Okay, let's go and ask Obroni, whose ancestor has nothing to do with the land. That was the idea. And then, unfortunately, with that diabolic mind, they preyed on that and started forcing some of our chiefs to sign bonds and started arming some of them against each other and all of this. I agree totally with you. Heavy burden should go to the white man because, of course, like we have all agreed, nobody set up shop at Cape Coast and say, hey, human beings for sale. Nobody did that. Right? But at the same time, if we do not find those, let me tell you this small thing before I wrap up my piece here. Kwame Tua, I don't know if anybody knows the history of Kwame Tua. Kwame Tua was an Ashanti royal. When the British invaded Ashanti and they were looking for the golden stool, how did they even find the fake one that they found? Kwame Tua was the one who was telling at every point. So when they identified Kwame Tua, we know what they did. They fed false information to Kwame Tua, and Kwame Tua went and told the white people, say, "Oh, the stool is over there." And when they went, they captured the stool, sent it to England, only to go and discover that it was wood plated in brass and sprayed with gold. That stool is at the Ashanti Museum right now. If you go there, they'll tell you about that. But that's what I'm talking about. There are people who are going to be collaborators. If we don't identify them and feed them false information like they did to Kwame Tua, there will be an impediment in our upward march. That's what I'm saying. Give thanks. Empress, I think you wanted to say something that took too much of the time. Sorry about that.
Where do I begin? I don't know. Listen, let us look at the history of the Native Americans. And what the white man wiped them out, essentially. And those that remain live on reservations and are plagued by drug use, by alcoholism, by poverty, by deprivation, by teenage pregnancy, by murders, by human trafficking. I mean, it is sad what has happened to the Native Americans in their own land. And you know how the white man was able to achieve that? By creating division amongst them, getting them to fight against each other and to look at each other as, as the enemy. We must be careful to not fall in that trap.
Mm-hmm.
We are sophisticated enough. We are knowledgeable. We are experienced. We are educated. We know the propaganda of the white man. We know his schemes. We must not fall for it. We must not give too much oxygen and energy to that. The Jews were able to put their differences aside in order to recover reparations. They were able to put their differences aside, and they present themselves as a united front. Do some background into Judaism and see how many different sects of Jews there are, and some of them are hostile to other sects. But on the face of it, for the public benefit, Jews are a cohesive people, because they're not going to spend whatever little energy they may have, whatever differences they may have, they have shelved it or they have minimized it, and they have focused on coming together collectively as a people against the rest of the world. We need to do the same thing. We know that Africa wasn't one culture before the white man came. We know that they didn't have one, value system. They didn't have one spiritual system. That there were different, sects or whatever it is, different cultures. And that's all well and good. But for right now, for our immediate purpose of surviving oppression, colonialism, enslavement, those barriers have to fall. And we have to operate as one, as a unit. We know, right, as I said before, we cannot allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. So it's not perfect. We do not have a perfect union. But we're going to have to work with what we got. And we've got to shore up what we have. Because the white man doesn't make distinctions. He does not make distinctions between the Igbo. He does not make it in distinction between the Fulani. He does not make distinctions between the Ewe. He doesn't make distinctions between the Krobo and the Ga people. And we're not going to make distinctions either. So that is my
All right.
my comment on that point.
7. You will come in or Ras Kofi?
Make Ras Kofi speak.
Yes. But one thing to be said, we must remember also that during African society has it that when people misbehave, they are ostracized. And so already there was a contingent of people who society, because of their habits, have ostracized them. And so these people, they form bandage groups. So I think during the era of slavery, these are people who readily avail their services to support anything to enslave
interesting angle.
The kingdom that they were once a part of.
Ostracized from.
So, yes. And so the in terms of figures, comparing this few number of people to the whole Africans, to say Africans collaborated in slavery, I think sometimes their numbers in terms of the total number of Africans engaging in slavery, you say it's negligible. You can't say Africa collaborated in slavery based on that micro number of people, those who were acting as bandits in those days. And so, again, my point is in trying to, and then we see the slavery story as a case of the perpetrator and the victim. And so when we begin to make arguments for the perpetrator that, well, the victims, they victimized each other, then it seems we create an impression that the perpetrator, after all, is equally guilty like the victim. And so we tend to equate what the perpetrator has done to what the victims have suffered. And so the narrative becomes, well, Africans played a role. And so if we are asking, if we are talking about reparation, such conversation, it should, it's like there is no basis for that. Meanwhile, crime also has what they call retribution, where the perpetrator suffers some consequences based on their actions. And so in conversations where the perpetrator's role is minimized, I think the question of retribution becomes difficult to discuss. This is something I also wanted to chip in. Give thanks.
Interesting. Mepe said next it's just a suggestion because of course it's all of us deciding. I would like for us to next episode look at reparations, right? It's another topic on its own crowd together. But you just prompted me, Raskofi, by mentioning it. Next episode, hopefully we can. Are we in agreement on that? Can we look at reparations next month?
Okay.
7. All right, because I don't want to spoil it because I have my own issues with reparations. We'll save it for next month. But for now,
Yeah, I must admit that I'm not very versed. I have not been following up on that issue. There is a sister, I think in England, her name is Esther, if I'm not mistaken, who has done some serious research into the matter. There's another sister also, her last name may be Farmer. She had brought an action, a legal action for reparations. So a number of things have happened on that front. So I would have to sort of I'd have to brush up on that subject and the topic and to see where we are now.
Okay.
A number of
Sounds
things
good.
have been done throughout the years, but I'm not current. I'm not current. But I
Well,
will have to, I'll definitely have to
all right.
research.
We have a month to do that, so it's good that we are setting the topic now so we can all get abreast with it before we reconvene. But back to subject. Ras, 7, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just listening. I like the direction the thing to go. Maybe if we circle back to Raskofi wasn't here. We're talking about the Western influences and all that. And then I think one thing we could try to do right now is say we're trying to clarify the vision. What are we going for, right? So like I said, let's all work together. Let's all stand together. What are we shooting for? So let's make assumptions that we're on the same page, right?
Yes.
It doesn't need to. We don't need a lecture or anything on that. But I think it's something we'll go fit, help each other clarify what it means when we say we're doing this together. Who are we? What do we need? What are we talking about? What do we? You know what I mean? Because some people say, "Oh, we need liberation. We need unity. We need this." What does it really mean? So I feel so if we go there a little bit, and I'm gonna love to hear what Raskofi have to say about some of these things, as well. But I want to get everybody else too, definitely.
Well, yeah. I don't know if Raskofi would like to go on that but again, let's take that first because I also have a question. Maybe I'll save that for last.
Ras,
as we
please
wrap up.
I'll comment later on that.
Okay, all right. So basically, I wanted us to kind of look at it like this, though. say at least we are represented quite well on this platform right now. We have Empress Marina, who whose ancestry, let's say, was stolen away and all of that. And we have I who can also claim we are continental Africans and can represent in that form and everything. Let's ask ourselves, Empress Marina, I know you've said this already and you said it's a non-starter and everything, but let me ask you, all the same, what are some of the things, apart from the slavery education that's not in the schools that you find, what are some of the things that you wish could be better on the continent for you?
Well, obviously, it's going to take some time to build relationships, right? And trust, because we're just now getting to know each other after having been separated for over 400 years. So we're just now coming back, right? Say in the last 20, 30, 40 years, we've just been coming back to the continent in in large numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I want to, right. The relationship will build over time, I'm sure, right? It will get better.
Mhm.
And, and reservations will fall, and, we will let our guards down vis-a-vis each other. So that is the hope. I wish that our brothers and sisters on the continent don't just regard us as people with money who they can scam. Yeah,
Mhm.
people with money who they can they can
Mhm.
rob and they can scam and they can get things out of us. That we have this endless amount of wealth, and that we can always go back to the West to replenish. So if they take us, it's not everybody in the West is doing well, and they need to know that. Once again, they do not understand our reality. They do not understand the reality in the West. There was one of my sisters who she used to live in South Africa, but she lives in she's in England now. She's back in England now. And she said she was telling a white man, she was telling somebody in Kenya or whatever, that there are poor white people in America who are and in the West, and who sleep on the on the streets, on the side, the pavement. And they're like, no, they could not believe that there were poor white people. And that comes from their perception of whites being superior and infallible
Mhm.
and successful and beautiful, because they ascribe every positive trait to whiteness and every negative trait to blackness. It's hard to penetrate. It's hard to penetrate that type of thinking in the West, because you have people in Jamaica who think that way. You have people in the US who think that way, and they have access to more information. They can research. So what I've come to realize is going to be it's a slow process. It's going to take time for us to really educate our brothers and sisters on the continent as to what the reality is in the West, what we have gone through. But we can start that by becoming involved in the school system. We need to get that narrative out there. We need to get that side of the story. They need to learn about the transatlantic slave trade, and the fact of the reality of our existence in the West. They need to know more about it, because the more they know about it, is the more they will see our commonality. But more than just our commonality, they will see the bond that there exists between us, and that the bond, it is real. It is not it is not contrived. It is not something that we're not romanticizing a relationship, or making more of something than it actually is, but that factually we are blood brothers and sisters, and that our experiences have been different. We've both been oppressed. We in the West through slavery, and they on the continent through colonialism. And we have both been oppressed, and have both suffered the consequences of that oppression. And so, we who are coming home, it's because the scales have fallen off our eyes. We have achieved a certain level of consciousness, of awareness, and that is what brings us back home. And we're coming home at your brother and your sister. We're not coming home at your slave master. We're not coming home at your superiors. We're not. We have a lot to teach you, but you also have a lot to teach us. So there needs to be a robust exchange of ideas. You're going to teach us a lot of things that we have long forgotten, that we don't know, we never knew. And we're going to
Empress,
also teach you.
how would you react to people who raise examples of that superior mentality that you just assured us that you're not? And I love when you speak, because you're giving us the assurance that yes, indeed, we are going to be able to reunite with our brethren and our sisters on the other side. But
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is that we also are dealing with some bare facts that we cannot skip over.
Yes.
The Liberian Civil War, was started as a result of governance issues stemming from returned Africans who had governed the country forever and were keeping the natives in a certain class segment.
Yes.
We can't gloss over these things. So that we just this is why I asked what some of the things that you would love to see differently on the continent. We on the continent, for instance, would also love to see something like that not happen, right? That once our brethren and sisters return, they're returning us to their kindred and not to have that Joseph mentality. This is where I find that the previous government, previous government, President Kufuor, with that Joseph
Project.
whatever. I burn fire on that thing from the first day I heard about that thing till today. Because that's actually reinforcing that same thing that we've been talking about for the past almost 2 hours now, right? That's planting the Joseph mentality in the heads of our brethren and sisters. And that is the same exact thing the white man wants to do. Because they want to make it look like, oh, you were sinned against. You were sold into slavery like Joseph. And you're returning with all the glory and all the whatnot to go and civilize your king who sold you into slavery. And some of our brethren and sisters, unfortunately, have bought into this narrative and come back to the continent thinking that they are Joseph and we are all the other tribes or brothers that there was. You know, so how would you react to that? And I would like for all of us to chip in as well. Kofi, I beg if you have something to contribute to that as well before we wrap up, that would be great for me. But Empress, if you have something to go, you can go first, please.
All right. So there are things that we do better than a lot of our brothers and sisters in the West, because I'm sorry, on the continent, because we've been exposed. It's a lack of opportunity, poverty, and a certain mindset. It's a lack of opportunity, and right. And dear beloved, you had said earlier that you'd spoken earlier. Spoken earlier of ones coming in and thinking that the natives, the indigenous Africans are stupid. They're not so smart. They're not intelligent. They're not this and they're not that. And once again, we have to see it as a lack of opportunity and not inherent inferiority. That's what we need to know. One of the things I said I wanted to do was to open a creche, right? So I can take in children at a very, very early age. Because what I have noticed is that, for example, my 6-year-old granddaughter, she can sit down and have a conversation with you. She can say, oh no, I disagree with you on that. But why would you say that? She said, Grandma, why are you so boring? I wish you were more, you understand? She can say that to me. I have yet to have such a conversation with some of the girls that I interact with in Ghana who are 18, 19, 20 years old. And they cannot speak. They cannot speak up. But it's a lack of confidence. So, because I'm saying, so what is it that makes my 6-year-old granddaughter, she's able to talk like that? And with so much confidence. She can go into a restaurant and she orders what she wants, and she'll say, oh no, I don't like this. I had it last time. It wasn't no good, or whatever. And I don't see that same level of confidence among even older children. But once again, as I said, I recognize it as it's a matter of access and exposure. So so there are things that we're more advanced. We coming in from the West, we're more advanced on for the most part. Even in terms of hygiene. I've been going to Ghana for forever. My daughter is in Ghana right now, and she and I were talking, and she was like, my God, Mom, after all this time, you constantly have to be telling people to wash your hands. Sometimes it's lack of access to water, and sometimes it's just habit. And so there are things that we can teach our brothers and sisters on the continent. But there are a lot of things that they can teach us too, and they have taught us.
Like so what? Give us an example.
Well, I mean, they can teach us about various plants. Various plants, and what they're good for, what they're useful for, right?
Herbal medicine.
Yeah, herbal medicine. They can teach us Oh, wow. Survival skills that we don't have. They can certainly teach us that. They can
How
teach
would
us.
you, just on a light note, how would you say, what would you say if not washing your hands is part of those survival skills? Like you toughening yourself against germs, just on a light note.
No, but you don't have, if you don't have access to water, if you don't have access to water freely,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're gonna cut corners.
Mm.
You're gonna cut corners. Once again, it's circumstances. It's
Oh,
circumstances.
okay. All right. Kofi Asante.
Yes, give thanks. Ras was asking about unity and liberation. I think about it. I think Kwame Nkrumah, when he earned independence, said freedom is not an end in itself, but freedom will allow us to do better for ourselves than the colonizer would. And so liberation is being able to do for ourselves what the colonizer or enslaver will not do, i.e., develop ourselves. The colonizer will only underdevelop us and develop himself at our expense. But if our resources are meant for us, are used in our interest, then liberation should mean our ability to use our resources, human, natural, and all these resources for our own benefit. And so that's where I see liberation. When we begin to explore African resources for African people, that is where I see liberation. And in terms of unity, I think there was a conversation about the Sith region, that Africa united on the continent but failed to admit their brothers from the diaspora. There was a conversation that Haiti wanted membership
Yes.
of
Yes.
the African Union but was denied. I think this also has to do with our perception of who an African is.
Were they
Maybe,
denied though? Is that a fact? I think it's still in the works, so I don't believe they
oh,
were
okay.
denied.
Oh, okay.
I
I
just think
think,
they're taking too long, if you ask me. Way too long.
yes, it doesn't look like we are very receptive to countries like Haiti and other diasporan Africans being a formal part of the AU. But you realize that sometimes states like Israel are giving like observer statuses to see whatever we do, but those Africans who really want to have a stakeholding in our African affairs, the people for which the Organization of African Unity or the Pan-African movement from its inception was created, it looks like in forming the AU, we do not really include them formally. And so I think formalizing the relationship with the Sith region is very important, such that resources, for instance, if African resources, if diasporan Africans are well organized to be able to invest in um, gold exploration, extraction, and value addition, we would think it is better than allowing a former enslaver to come do this on our behalf and relegate profits to themselves. And so ideas of unity means Africans recognizing all their human resources and also appreciating that every place where an African lives is part of the African continent. Any lands that Africans have possessed over the period is an African land, and then also admitting that anything African, one African language, for instance, the African American language, is an African language. The Swahili language is an African language. Patois is an African language. Admitting that anything African belongs to all of us African, I think
Home and
also
abroad.
part or a basis for our unity. And so,
I'm gonna go. Okay,
said,
yeah. I was.
Empress, you want to come in?
Okay. Okay, Kofi, round up. I think we actually have just 3 minutes to wrap up. So
so with these few words, yes, I give thanks for the opportunity.
All right, give thanks, Natty. Give thanks. 7 final words. We just have 3 minutes to wrap up. Just take like 1 minute.
Just quick. I just want to say, all of us, they talk about unity. All of us need the unity, you know. And I feel say that'll be the same way across the continent. You know, all our people want really, really underneath all this to unite. So make we just sharpen the vision and then just keep doing together, you know.
Definitely. All right, Empress, you still there? Okay, I think the Empress disconnected, but just about on time too, because we have just 2 minutes, and I'm just going to take those 2 minutes to thank you very much, first of all, for doing the listening and the watching. We've been live on Radio Culture, live on MyTuner Radio. We're also live on modernghana.com. We are also live on our social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. This discussion we will have every month, last Friday of every month. I want to say a very big thank you to my man, Kofi Asante, Ras Kofi Asante, who has been phenomenal in putting works on this project together. And also the man, 7 Fireside, as you can see. Thank you very much, brethren. And also all the other brethren and sisters in the background that were not able to come on the show today. We hope to see you on next month's episode. It's going to be on the last Friday of the month. And as already advertised, we'll be discussing reparations. Do we really need reparations as Africans? Should we be demanding reparations? All right. Word for next month. Until such times, thank you very much. One more time, my name is Kwesi Esunbak. I'm reaching you from Studio 1, Radio Culture. We'll see you next month. Give thanks.